All right, welcome back. So we have a few more videos on the grid. The next one, this one, is about aligning items, aligning our content inside of the grid. So if you watch the videos in the nav section when I talked about the Flexbox utilities, like justify content, align items, those same classes are coming back. So if you didn't watch those, I recommend you do. But if you do know Flexbox already from outside of Bootstrap, if you have experience with it, this should be pretty straightforward. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. Let's say that this is our row, and our content doesn't take up all of the space within the row. How do we align our content vertically? Do we want it just all be at the top, the middle, the bottom? And the same goes for what if we have extra space that we're not using on the right side or the left side, or do we want to split it between all of our items? These are all different options. But the properties we use, justify content, we'll come back to that, and align items. So those are things that we've actually already talked about earlier in the course with nav. So it's not unique to when you're using a row or a column. These apply to all sorts of things. All right, so let's quickly take a look at an example. So I have a container, which we have to have. I'm going to have a row. And inside that row, I'm just going to start by doing a column. And I'm going to put some content in here. Like let's put an H3 that says thing 1. And then a paragraph that just has maybe 30 lorem ipsum words. And then I'm going to duplicate that. Actually, I'll just do it myself. So I'm just going to do call on its own and let it figure out how wide the column should be. Just equal size columns for now. So call, and then this one will be another H3 that says thing 2, and then a paragraph. But I'm going to actually do less text than this one. So I think I did 30. Let's do lorem 15. And then I'm going to do one more of the exact same thing down here and have an H3 that says thing 3, have a paragraph, and this one will have lorem 40. Okay, so we have our content within this grid, within our row. If I give the row a border, you can see, and I'll also give each of our columns a border. It's not going to be very pretty, but you can see that right now our content is, first of all, stretching down. It's going all the way down to take up the entire container based off of the height of our tallest thing, which is this. So if I gave my container an actual height, or my row a height, like style, not a great idea to do it this way, but if I did this, 400 pixels, is that going to be tall enough? You can see that our items grow. The border around each column goes all the way down. So our border doesn't stop like right here, for example. So the two properties that we can use. So if we want to play with this vertical space, we want to align things differently, we can use the align items property. So it goes into it on the documentation here somewhere. Did I miss it? Oh, I totally skipped it, didn't I? Hang on. Here it is. Okay. So we can align things vertically this way. Also, if you go to utilities, flex, I already mentioned this earlier in the course, but if you look at the possibilities for align items, there's a couple of options. And right now the default is stretch. It's stretching to take up all of the space, all the possible space. But if I give it a different value, so on my row, if I say align items start, start is going to refer to the top here. So if I save, my content now is aligned to the top, and it doesn't stretch all the way. It stops where it naturally would stop. So this isn't a great look, but we could also do align items end and do the opposite. Or we can do center. And align item center, sometimes people like to do, depending on what you're actually working with and what your data is, it can look nice. Maybe if you're doing like a pricing grid like this, if you have different sized sort of items, it can look okay if they are center aligned sometimes. So that's one option. So this is how we can center things within our grid vertically. What we can also do is individually move things around. So let's say I want this, I'm going to just duplicate this so that you can see both. Let's say that I want this one to be aligned to the top. So instead of align item center, I can do align self on each on each column. So align self start, if I save, it goes to the top. Well, everything. Okay, so you can see these are still stretching. This one isn't. So if I come to this one, the second item, and say align self end, or let's do center. Now it's in the middle. And then this one, I'll say align self end. And there we go. So now I'm moving them individually around. So this is how you can move things vertically within the grid. Up and down, move them around. That's pretty much all there is to it. And this is with just equal size columns, but the same applies if these weren't equal sized. If instead this one was column 3, this was column 4, actually it's the smallest one. So let's do column 4, 3, and column, what's that leave us, 5. So even when they take up different space, it's the same idea. I don't want to give you the impression it only works on evenly sized columns. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about is horizontal alignment. So if we have excess space in our grid, so like in this case, if we just have 2 column 4s, there's a whole 4 units of space available. How do we divvy it up? We can use justify content to dictate that, basically. It's the same property we used with the navs. So let's make a second one of these. I'm just going to duplicate this one more time, but this time I'm only going to have 2 items, and sure, I'll make them the same size, column 4 and column 4. So that means we have 4 extra pieces missing, and I won't bother aligning them for now. If we look at what that gives us, here we go. Let me just add a little H1 that says justify content. Okay. So this is our extra space. How do we want to handle it? So if we go up to the row, I can say justify content, and the default is start. This is the start when we're aligning horizontally. They're going from here, the left to the right. So the default is start. If I enter start, we're not going to see a change. Now if I do end, move things over to the end, to the right side. If I do center, they're going to come to the middle. And then that excess space is just spread around on the outside. I can also do between, where between takes the space, those four units, and puts it between whatever items. Now, if we had more than 2 items, it would split it up between however many items we have evenly. And there's also around. And around is like between, except it also adds space on the outside, if that makes sense. So if I were to add one more of these in here, but this one, instead of column, let's do column 1, a really tiny thing. Oh, very ugly, isn't it? So if I go, okay, that does not look good. Let's do maybe just this here. And I'm going to get rid of this heading and just put a simple paragraph in there that says thing 2, like that. Okay, this is just hideous. But you can see that the space is still being evenly divided on the outside and the inside. If I change it to be between, which I sometimes use between if you have excess space, looks fine. But we can also combine what we learned earlier to do the vertical alignment. So if I want to center this one that says thing 2, for example, I could do align self center. And there we go. Now it doesn't look very good because my text is a little too large for this, and it's not, the text itself isn't changing size. But the point is that this does work. So right now these are stretching all the way down, this one, and this one is in the middle. It's not stretching, it's aligned to the center. And then the excess space we have is being shared between them in the middle. All right, so those are the 2 properties, or 3 properties really. If we're talking about vertical alignment, for the entire row, we can use align items. This is align item center. If we did align item start, they go up here to the top. If we do align items end, they would be aligned to the bottom. Then we talked about align self. So we can individually change the vertical alignment of each piece of information, each column. Then we talked about justify content, which allows us to dictate the horizontal alignment. Do we move them all to the left or the right? Do we split up the space? Do we center them all? Lots of options. All right, so that's grid alignment. There's a lot of stuff you can do here. It's very powerful to be able to move things like that, align them vertically and horizontally. And that's pretty much all I have to say about aligning stuff.